If you've been in the boardroom, you know that that can get very interesting to say the least, dysfunctional sometimes. But how do you actually get things done? So, a question that most clients will have for me is like, how do I get my board to fundraise? And here's how you do that managing up. Managing up is not playing politics, it's not manipulation. It's about making sure that things get done. Nonprofits are a mess, things are hard, and you really want to be able to master the skill. So, if this decision is going to impact your program or your service users and you want to have a say, managing up is a critical skill for that. Welcome back to the Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. I'm your host, Maria Rio. And today I'm talking about a critical skill for all nonprofit staff, managing up. So sometimes on this podcast, we talk a little bit about governance or fundraising specific things, but I think managing up is a skill that every single person at all levels of the organization should deeply understand. Let's be real. Nonprofits might not be run in the best way, or there might be power imbalances. So, um, you know, executive directors that are run too thin and they keep forgetting what they asked for, or boards that won't listen, right? So, these skills will actually help you push forward the things that you need to do to get the job done. That's what managing up is all about, strategically working with leadership instead of against it. So you could drive impact without burning yourself out. And if you don't manage up, if you choose like that's not something that I can do, it's not something that I want to do, sometimes you end up stuck in cycles of inefficiencies, feeling undervalued, or worst of all, getting completely burned out chasing people around. So by the end of today's episode, you'll have real practical strategies to navigate this kind of leadership challenge like a pro. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with why you need to manage up. Nonprofits are a mess, things are hard, and you really want to be able to master the skills. So we have power hoarding where decision making is concentrated at the top, right? So if this decision is going to impact your program or your service users and you want to have a say, managing up is a critical skill for that. You have boards. So we all love some good board members, but a lot of board members don't understand nonprofit realities. They think it runs like a business or it can just be run exactly like corporate. And that's not exactly how it works. So for them to be making decisions on the day to day of staff or how fundraising works or where we can or should deliver programs, that can create roadblocks. It can create issues. They're usually not very representative of the lived experience of our beneficiaries. So, by not managing up and not giving them the information they need to be successful, you're kind of doing a disservice to your own work. So, today I want to focus with boards and EDs primarily, but EDs are usually run off their feet, right? They're fundraising, they're doing HR, they're doing strategy, they're doing like comms and grant writing, right? So if they're drowning and they can't move forward on some things and they don't have time to collect the information, then that makes your job harder too, right? We've all had an ineffective ED who would give us instructions and wasn't sure of the direction of the organization, right? So if you don't manage up, you are just stuck, right? So you might get burnout, high turnover of staff, and just not manage your organization in the best way to serve your community. So managing up is not playing politics, it's not manipulation. It's about making sure that things get done. Um, so let's talk about how you actually manage up. In nonprofits, we have a few different ways of managing people. The most commonly understood one is managing down, right? So we know how to manage volunteers who report to us, we know how to manage staff that report to us. And sometimes as you get higher in the hierarchical model of nonprofit, those skills become less and less used, it feels like. But we understand managing down, right? Another thing to think about is managing sideways. So if you're a director and you need something from a different director, what is the best strategy for that? And today we're going to focus on managing up. So how to manage your ED, right? Let's talk about your executive director first. one of the easiest ways that I have found of like how to manage up is actually trying to make people's lives easier, right? So, really, step one, understanding their priorities, figuring out like what is keeping them so busy, what is keeping them up at night, what is the biggest stress on the organization, and trying to align my ask, my work to those priorities, right? So, just understanding their world is step one. Step two is coming to them with solutions and not problems. I know we all hate this, but when your person is completely overwhelmed or burnt out, as EDs often are, you really need to provide solutions or at least options, right? So don't come to your ED being like, oh, I don't know what to do with the printer. It's not working, right? Like they're busy, right? The way to get your ideal outcome is I don't know what's going on with the printer, but I actually already called Pitney Bowes. They're on their way with a mechanic. If that doesn't work, like I was thinking we could switch to this company because we've been having issues with Pitney Bowes for the past like year or whatever. So just make their life easier by bringing solutions that you actually want. Controlling the narrative would be my third tip. So, like framing things in a very strategic manner will be super helpful. So, for example, when I want to start a new fundraising campaign and I need my ED to approve it, I usually will present it in a way that highlights the benefits of us having this rather than just, hey, I need a CRM, right? If we have a CRM, we'll be able to do automation, segmentation, personalization, direct outreach. We'll be able to see who our donors are, right? So the end result of your ask, I think, is really helpful. So just don't let them think through the issue and come to the wrong conclusion. Like, oh, do we actually even need a CRM? I don't think so. Or, let's just use this like other CRM that is actually not the right size for your organization, right? Really provide that solution up front and let them know what the impact and the results of that initiative will be. So, the next one is upward feedback. This one can be very scary if you don't have an executive director or a leader that is open to feedback. So, I think I just want to take a little bit of time on this one. Something that you can do is let's say your ED says, hey, I really need you to finish this grant over the weekend, right? So instead of saying, no, that's impossible, right? You could say, I understand why this is a priority, and here's what I would need to do that, right? So maybe you're looking for extra hours, or maybe you're just saying, here's how we need to get out of this cycle of applying for things on the weekend, right? So I need extra support, or I need a consultant to step in, or I need other people to provide this data because I can't keep leaving things to the last moment. So really explain what you need to execute that item well and timely, right? So don't let other people's timelines create an emergency in you. You control the narrative, right? That was the step before. So, hey, I understand why that's important, but we need X, Y, and Z to do that right. Another way to do this is asking someone if you can give them some feedback, right? Hey, can I give you some feedback? That helps a person consent to you providing feedback to them and just helps set them up to receive it better if they consent to it, right? Like they're less likely to get upset or mad and it just becomes a little bit easier. The other thing would be keeping your boundaries strong when it comes to feedback, right? So if they ask you to write something and you said, "No, I'm not going to be working on the weekend," then keeping those boundaries strong and saying like, "I understand the priority," going back to understanding the priorities, but we need to move forward in a way that aligns with this to be as successful as possible. So those are my best like managing your ED tips. But I think something to also remember is if this person is toxic or refuses to listen and is not willing to collaborate, it's not your job to fix them and you can't manage someone out of that kind of personality deficiency, right? At some point you have to decide, is this worth it? But these tips are for people who are very collaborative, who understand the value of your work and who want you to be successful, not someone who's okay with you being completely burned out and has no plans on changing that, no matter how you message it, right? So really think that through. So now that we've talked about managing your ED, I'm going to talk about managing boards. If you've been in the boardroom, you know that can get very interesting to say the least, dysfunctional sometimes. But how do you actually get things done? So, a question that most clients will have for me is like, how do I get my board to fundraise? And here's how you do that managing up. This is how you get that support. So, similarly to the tips with the EDs, give them information complete, control the narrative, all that stuff. But we're going to talk about some additional tips for boards. So, help them understand what they should do versus what they're doing. So, what is the gap? So, if you have something in your mind that they should be doing and they're not, let's let them know that because some boards just don't know. Like, even if these people have been on boards before, they might just not be as well versed as you need them to be successful, especially if you're an ED that's run off their feet. So let them know. I want you to focus only on governance. I don't want you to focus on the tablecloth colors. Like, that is not your role. So, what you should focus on is strategy, financial oversight, and big picture decisions that I bring to you, not micromanaging. Like, that is not your role. So, really make the expectation clear. My second tip is board education. So, continue to educate your board in as many opportunities as possible. That could be sending them a podcast, sending them an article, doing training. And if your board doesn't understand fundraising or nonprofit, it is really on to us, the staff, the ED, to teach them, to get them to think like differently about what their role is. So, one of the challenges that I see is a lot of EDs will say the board chair will do the training, they'll do the board education, they'll teach the board what they should know. But most of the time, that's not the case. The board chair is usually, if not as lost as they are, then sometimes actively harmful, right? So if you don't have the right person in that board chair seat, you're not going to get any results from the board. They're not going to know how to read a budget. They're not going to know how to actually do the things that they're supposed to be doing. So it is then on the executive director and the people in the room to provide that information to the board to really educate them and get them moving in the right direction because they don't know what they don't know. Tip number three, different from managing an ED. An ED is one person, a board is many people, right? So you really have to focus on finding your allies, right? So this is how you can manage your board is by adding some of that like peer support, peer pressure from other board members. So not all board members are created equally. If you see one that is crushing it based on your expectation of what the board should be doing, provide positive feedback. Say, hey, I love that you're doing X, Y, and Z. I love that you're picking up the phone and calling our donors to thank them for their support, right? Very tangible things for other people to mimic, aspire to, work on, right? So that's one very easy tip. Finding your allies and praising things that you like, right? So people will start to understand the work and the people on your side can put pressure to get other people on your side. Similarly, with managing up with your ED, if that person is toxic, disengaged, or a roadblock on your board, just document everything. Make sure that you're bringing in other people. So, if you're the ED, bring in the board chair. If you are a staff person, bring in the ED and they can help address what's going on. So, in short, communication is everything, right? Frame your updates strategically. What's the most important thing that your ED or your board needs to know? Keep it short, clear, and actionable. They don't need to understand, like, oh, we did months of work and then we did this and then we did that. And here's this report, here's that report. They're lost and they didn't read the reports that you sent them. So, what is the most important thing that they need to walk out of this room with? That can be learning how to read the budget. It's okay to just have one simple goal. Think strategically about what would help the organization. Clear, short, and actionable. The next step is anticipating needs, right? So coming with a solution, knowing what leadership is looking for before they ask it, and then also being able to address concerns before they're brought up. So I really want to do a gala. Okay, well, I know that about my board, and I know that they think it is a way to build community. So, with that information, I can manage up by bringing forward other ways that I know are very successful in building community, right? That don't include a $400,000 cost. So there's opportunity there to use these anticipated needs to reframe your position and your ask. Another important tip is documenting everything. I know a lot of nonprofit workers, especially the racialized ones, we're always documenting stuff, keeping screenshots of our successes and then our challenges because it's just the smart thing to do. It protects you, right? So, for example, one of the challenges that I've had in managing up is when priorities shift. So, in one organization, like, yes, we're so excited about community centric fundraising, let's do it. We're very public about it. And then the leadership is saying, like, no, actually, I think I want to move back to donor centric fundraising, which is not something I was willing to do, right? So because I documented throughout, I could point back and say, in this conversation, we said that this was the path that we were taking. In this conversation, we agreed that hosting this event wasn't the best idea. In this conversation, we agreed that you were going to go and collect data for this program impact, right? So document, and then if there's an issue that arises, you can bring in your external champions, your allies on the board, and just have the basis of a plan because you know what you've already tried, what works and what doesn't. That being said, find your champions, right? So, who are the other people at the organization who feel this way? So, it could be your board member, it could be a volunteer, it could be another staff person, it could even be a donor if you are a fundraiser. So, just finding those champions is huge. But above all, you can't make chicken soup out of chicken shit, right? I don't know if you've heard that saying before, but you can't really fix toxic people. You can fix people not working well with each other and try to collaborate, but you really can't fix people who are egocentric or refuse to understand or just rude. So just know that these tips, they have a limit, unfortunately. Know when you need to push, adapt, or leave. So managing up is about strategic relationships, clear communication, and knowing when to push. So for your homework before our next episode, I want you to identify one key action that you can do to improve how you manage up, whether you're a staff person or the ED. What is something that you can do to move things forward from the tips that you've learned, whether that's, strategically positioning your ask or finding champions, right? Just start somewhere. And if you have any really good managing up stories, I would love to hear them. You can now actually send us a message in the show notes. There's a little place that says text us your story. I would love to hear your managing up stories, what you found was successful or not so successful. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what you think of these episodes. But until next time, take these tips, see what you can do to manage someone up. And I hope that this helps with the interpersonal dynamics and sometimes strategic chess moves that you have to make to excel at your role. As always, if you want to see our lovely faces, you can view this video on YouTube. I would love if you would subscribe to us there, subscribe to our email updates, or even subscribe to support the show. So this show is entirely self-funded right now. Oh my goodness. And we would love your support in bringing these conversations, these actionable lessons to you as our audience. Not everyone can afford to work with fancy consultants like us. So I really love to provide this information free of charge. But yeah, it is completely self-funded. So if you're interested in supporting this space and these conversations, please join the supporter base. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us for another conversation here. And yeah, until next time, bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.